Uncle Doug.
Hello.
I don't know if you remember, but what we tend to do on this show is we talk about things with each other, and so I'll just guide you gently into this.
Yeah, I'm a bit hazy.
Yeah, exactly. So
You are. I can't focus on you at all.
I'm going to ask Uncle Mark to chat with us a little bit.
Right.
I feel like this will be a good segment, but if it's not the end of the world.
Well, I'm glad to have the three of us here because I think this is an important topic and we can all contribute to it if I decide to let you. So, you guys, we're all old enough to have seen some shit in our decades of life in the mean streets of Salt Lake City, right? Where we thought we'd been around the block a time or two. I've been tear gassed, nearly killed in a car accident, almost sucked up in a tornado, and even humiliated when my date in high school, yes, a girl, guys, insisted I get up on her shoulders to get a better view at a Kenny Loggins concert. Okay?
That's delightful.
Well, my pride was profoundly wounded. I must admit that the view really was much better.
Oh, no.
And she didn't let me get down either. She's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, really? I can get down. She's like, no, stay up there. I'm like, okay. But it was a great way to see Highway to the Danger Zone live.
Yeah.
So.
She just knew that was the only way your crotch was getting anywhere near her body.
She wasn't wrong. But then 2016 rolled around and was like, hey, assholes, want to see me fuck some shit up? And we were all like, oh, no, this is the worst. But little did we know, 2020 was just warming up in the bullpen. And holy shit, 2020 has sucked so fucking much. This must be what the end of the world feels like.
Uh-huh.
We've had endless Trump, a goddamned earthquake, an Old Testament windstorm. HBO didn't renew The Watchmen, and Uncle Doug went AWOL for 3 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
I predict the end of the world.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
lots of people feel like I do, and lots of people have predicted the end of the world. Lots of people. From the Mayans to Martin Luther, from the founder of the Anthill Kids to a crazy chicken lady, predicting the end of the world is one of the hottest sectors of the gig economy. But unlike the end of the world prediction business, Uber will actually do the thing the app says it will, get you across town. So fear of the apocalypse or any of dozens of flavors of the end of the world is a real fucking fear religiously traumatized people experience, as we discussed in our Rapture Anxiety segment in episode 18. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at the long history of failed predictions by people high and low, smart and stupid over the years, so people can view the next predicted, as I'll call it, EOTW, with some statistical comfort, you guys.
Yeah.
Now, this list is going to seem insane, but this is just a smattering of failed predictions. There are hundreds more. So let's jump in semi-chronological order. First off, French Bishop Hilary of Poitiers, not the amazing American actor Sidney of Poitiers, predicted the world would end in the year 365 CE. Gave him a break. This exciting new field of science was brand new, so he got one wrong. Martin of Tours, not the discount travel agency Tours by Martin, but rather the celebrated French saint, predicted with some comfortable wiggle room that the world would end somewhere between 375 to 400 CE. He wrote,
Okay.
yeah, he wrote, there's no doubt the Antichrist.
25-year gap. That gives you some space.
You'll see as this goes on that he was one of the smart ones. So
You're right.
He wrote, there is no doubt that the Antichrist has already been born, firmly established already in his early years. He will, after reaching maturity, achieve supreme power. So shout out to the young Antichrist. Hydatius, the bishop of Aqua Flaviae, who I did not include in this just so I could say those names.
Aqua Flaviae was a cologne I used to wear in high school.
Aqua Flaviae. He wrote in 469 that mankind was so profoundly evil that the good Lord would not let it live to see another 13 years, predicting its end on the 27th of May, 482. No record of the world ending on that sunny May day has ever been found, but watch this space. The itinerant Christian scholar and freebooting eschatologist by the absolutely amazing fucking name Sextus Julius Africanus predicted way back in the 2nd century CE, based on some pretty tortured math, where days are turned into months from a passage in Daniel chapters 8 and 9, then somehow arrives at the capture of Jerusalem within the 20th year of Artaxerxes in the Olympiad year 83, year 4, which is obviously the year 490 in uncorrected lunar years, carry the 5, to arrive at the end of the world in the year 500. And the math checks out absolutely for sure, except wait, hold on, he later changed it to the year 800. It's totally 800. So Gregory of Tours, no relation to either the French saint or the Des Moines Travel Agency, as he was born Gregorius Florentius, was the highly regarded bishop of Tours in the 6th century. His book of Daniel Math zeroed in on the very precise date of planetary destruction occurring sometime between the years 799 and 806. He must have failed to carry the 5, as the world failed to end on every single one of the 2,555 days in his generous window.
You know, I'm starting to think that my parents utterly failed when they named me. Hearing these names, Sextus and Flavius, and I get Doug.
Yeah. Sextus Julius Africanus. Come on, beat that.
That sounds sexist and racist at the same time.
Yeah.
It's all the things. And Latin. Because apocalypse-obsessed loonies and biblical metaphorical poetry mathematicians are straight obsessed with round numbers, loads of people predicted the end of days to for sure kick off in the year 1000.
Yeah.
Including,
obvious when you think about it.
Totally. Including Pope Sylvester II, who despite A, being a pope, and B, being born Gerbert of Aurillac, was a surprisingly progressive dude, introducing both the abacus and the decimal numeric system of the Hindu-Arabic numerals to Europe for the first time, as well as encouraging people to study the more advanced Arabic and Greco-Roman mathematics and astronomy. And he was the first French pope. So cool guy, especially by papal standards, very into science, learning, and humanism, but still wrong as fuck about the end of the world.
I think he just wanted to be pope so he could change his name from Gerbert.
Yeah, but he changed it to Sylvester, so I don't know if he that seems like a wash.
Feels like a lateral move to me. So, the very weird 12th century Italian mystic and theologian, and what 12th century Italian mystic and theologian isn't really weird, I always say, Joachim of Fiore was absolutely certain the bookend to creation would occur on the exact moment of a 60-year spread sometime between 1200 and 1260, as it failed to happen on any single one of the available 21,900 days. He had a sad. But not to worry, being wrong about the second most important date in human history over and over again has zero effect on people's faith in you for some reason. So Joachim of Fiore spawned a whole following who called themselves Joachites, who kept up the guessing game, hitting on the years 1290, 1335, and 1378. Jury's still out on those. Now, Pope Innocent III, who, trust me, was far from the third most innocent pope, had his own prediction. He carried a big stick in medieval Europe, reasserting papal dominance over all the Christian kings. And while the hideousness of the Crusades began well before him, he really jammed a buckled velvet slipper down on the gas, greatly expanding the Catholic war to exterminate the Muslims and expel them from the Holy Land. In fact, his hatred of the Muslims is what he based his mathematical prediction on, saying the world would be consumed by Christ's loving fire in 1284, which was 666 years after the rise of Islam. He seems nice. Wrong, but nice. And you didn't have to be a murder pope or wandering mathematician who wasn't afraid to get to the square root of Iron Age Semitic fables to get into the end of the world game. You could maybe be a painter, like master of the early Italian Renaissance, Alessandro di Mariano di Vanni Filippi, more commonly known as Sandro Botticelli. He of one of the most famous works in Western art, The Birth of Venus, with the pretty naked lady on the half shell. Renaissance artists thought of themselves as all-around smarty pants, refusing to limit themselves to being shockingly fucking good at just one thing. See Da Vinci, Leonardo for further reading on that. But since Botticelli predicted the end of this wicked world sometime in 1503, yet himself outlived that by 7 years, I think he should have stuck to his frescoes.
Yeah.
So how about a lightning round? German priest, astrologer, and astronomer Johannes Stoffler took his second bite at the end times apple, predicting it would occur on the 20th of February, 1524, after his first prediction came and went. He died of the plague, but not before seeing he was wrong twice. German Anabaptist prophet Melchior Hoffman predicted Christ's fiery return in 1533, but somehow pissed off the Catholics and died in prison 10 years after his precious Jesus didn't come back. French theologian Pierre Dialy predicted the world's end in 1555. Spanish reformer Michael Servetus predicted it would be in 1585. The wonderfully named astronomer Regiomontanus called dibs on 1588. Little-known door decorator and Jew-hater supreme Martin Luther was dead certain it would end in 1600. There's those round numbers again. Our dear old friend and runner-up messiah Shabbatai Zevi, who we had a ball discussing in episode 79, predicted the year 1648, then recalculated it to 1666. But anyway, he had subsequently been, quote, convinced to become a Muslim and keep his yap shut long before either of those never happened. Little-known amateur sailor and grandmaster professional genocidal fuckface Christopher Columbus said why the fuck not and threw his purple velvet hat into the ring, predicting this round world would end in 1658. Sorry, Chris, wrong again. And as you can imagine, 1666 was a particularly itchy year for biblical literalists, including some hardcore puritanical wackos in England called the Fifth Monarchists, who, to be fair to them, found the Triple Sixes, the raging bubonic plague, and the Great Fire of London to be pretty bad omens. Yeah. I think they had a fairly solid case. Calvinist minister Johann Heinrich Alsted predicted 1694, as did Johann Jacob Zimmermann. Godfather of the Salem witch trials Cotton Mather predicted the year 1697. Then when that failed, he revised his guesses twice more. John Napier guessed 1688, then found some late ballots and revised it to 1700. I mean, you get it for fuck's sake. From the 2nd century forward, excited apocalypse anticipatory prediction is what March Madness brackets are today. Something everybody in the office does because everybody else is doing it, right? So let's jump ahead 100 years. We can hopscotch over many, many, many more failed predictions. Closer to the modern age, hopefully trying to guess the horrible death of the planet by multiplying Exodus by Deuteronomy and then dividing by Genesis, has hardly waned as a fun pastime for crazy people who want Jesus to incinerate all the people that they hate. If anything, it's picked up steam. Remember the crazy chicken lady I mentioned in the beginning, guys?
Yes, how could I forget?
A woman named Mary Bateman prophesied the world would end in 1806. How did she know? Well, obviously because her chicken, known as, and I am not kidding here, the Prophet Hen of Leeds, was laying eggs what were inscribed with the words, Christ is coming. This caused quite a stir until it was discovered she was writing the words on the eggs, then jamming them back up the poor hen's oviduct.
Wow.
Yeah. In addition to being a fraud, a failed end-time predictor, and insidious animal abuser, she was also hanged for murdering one person and attempting to murder a second one with poisoned pudding, just to complete the total Englishness of her whole story.
You're telling me that someone who's willing to torture a chicken for an end times like practical joke could turn out to be a psycho?
Yeah,
Weird.
and even stranger, you could view her skeleton in the museum in Leeds until 2015. So that's
and luckily, no one who loves pudding has turned out to be a monster ever since.
So let's jump ahead a tad more. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, predicted the apocalypse in 1836. Turns out he failed to enter his guess on time, so it was postmarked too late for Jesus and the Whore of Babylon to act on it. Which brings us to William Miller, a simple country Baptist preacher who predicted Jesus would repatriate on the 21st of March, 1843. Oops, no, he meant 1844. Sadly for the Reverend Miller, Jesus Holy Ghosted him, but the venerable Dutch nobleman and politician Leopold von Sass von Jesselt did sadly die on that day, so it wasn't a total loss. And by the way, whenever I get to be a bit of a dramatic, big Exmo gay guy, please call me a big old fancy Leopold von Sassy von Sassafras. Anyway, what were we talking about?
You were on the Millerites. You were doing...
So what were known as the Millerites transformed eventually into both the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists, following what would become known as the Great Disappointment. which is also how my parents referred to both myself and to Douglas. Maybe real person, maybe not. Mother Shipton, a.k.a. Ursula Soothtel, that we explored back in episode 161, apparently wrote, "The world to an end shall come in 1881, except no, she probably didn't because she probably never existed." A little closer to home, indigenous American Paiute prophet Wovoka, who we discussed in episode 81, predicted that his possibly Mormon-inspired ghost dance ritual would foment the end of the white man's world in 1890. He was woefully wrong. Charles Taze Russell, the spiritual founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, apparently having not learned anything about putting an exact date on prophecy from the Great Disappointment, prophesied Jesus would burn the earth and separate the goats from the sheep in 1914. He himself survived his own prediction by 2 years. The International Bible Students Association, an arm of the Jehovah's Witnesses, declared in 1918 Christianity would be attacked by leftists, church members would be slaughtered by the millions, and all world governments would be gone by 1920. Nope. The Jehovah's Witnesses, again, set the global expiration date to 1941.
You guys, learn the lesson. Come on, man.
They're not done yet, Dan.
I know.
Pearl Harbor had a really bad day that year, but the Earth overall survived. This guy's fantastic. Evangelist, literal flat earther, and blue ribbon crazy person, Wilbur Glenn Voliva, declared that, quote, "The world is going to puff and disappear, first in 1923, then 1927, then, of course, 1930, then, obviously, 1934, landing at last and wrongly on 1935. Interestingly, he was the first Christian preacher to own his own radio station, from which he broadcast such amazing quotes as this. "The idea of a sun millions of miles in diameter and 91 million miles away is silly. The sun is only 32 miles across and not more than 3,000 miles from the earth. It stands to reason it must be so. God made the sun to light the earth, therefore, and therefore must have placed it close to the task it was designed to do. What would you think of a man who built a house in Zion, Illinois, and put the lamp to light it in Kenosha, Wisconsin?" He's fantastic. We'll do a whole segment on him sometime. He's amazing. Dorothy Martin, head of the UFO cult, the Brotherhood of the Seven Rays, claimed we'd all be destroyed by floods on December 21st, 1954. The massive disappointment among her cult members led to groundbreaking scientific research about the cult mentality, which is true. Syndicated psychic and astrologer Gene Dixon proclaimed a planetary alignment would blow us up like Alderaan, February 4th, 1962. American UFO prophet, because that's a thing, George Van Tassel said Ashtar the alien told him the apocalypse would begin on August 27th, 1967, with a Soviet nuclear attack on the southeast U.S. Our old friend Jim Jones.
Why would an alien know? That's what I mean. Are aliens also sort of like Jesus? I don't know. It's just funny to me that you just take the word of an alien about the Russian plans to annihilate us.
Well, especially if his name is Ashtar the alien. So, our old friend Jim Jones, whom we examined in episode number 5, declared he had seen visions of the world destroyed by nuclear war in 1967. Charles Manson, another old friend we chatted about in episode 35, prophesied and tried to foment a world-ending race war in 1969. The Jehovah's Witnesses again said maybe Armageddon, already in progress, might finish up in 1975. The Brahma Kumaris, a spiritual group founded in India, declared that in 1976, a great cleansing destruction of nuclear annihilation would cause all the continents but India to sink into the molten core of the earth. I searched the headlines of that day. Nobody mentioned anything about disappearing continents. Another old friend we discussed in episode 128, hideous French-Canadian monster boy and leader of the Anthill Kids cult, Roche Thériault, prophesied to his ragged flock that the 1,000-year reign of himself and God would begin on February 17th, 1979. Pat Robertson, guys, we're playing some of our greatest hits here.
Love it.
Whose predictive statistics we discussed just back in episode number 157. One fine day in 1976, he insisted the world would end in 1982. Sadly, it did not because he's still in it. One of America's looniest bigots, head of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, was absolutely certain the 1991 Gulf War was the final battle of Armageddon. Which brings us to a person we have not yet discussed in depth on this show, but if I call correctly, kind of gave Uncle Dan his start in broadcasting/podcasting, American evangelist, broadcaster, and Bible dum-dum Harold Camping.
Yes.
Right? That's true, right?
Absolutely. That is true. Frank and I, we hadn't yet done a podcast. We had talked about it, and then we decided to do a trial run with a live show on a local radio, internet radio program, and we just did Rapture Watch.
Yeah, all about Camping's predictions.
On
right?
on the day of the prediction. We just waited for it to happen. It never came true.
You're cute that you said prediction singular. So,
oh, right.
using the peer-reviewed, foolproof scientific method of projecting future events by comparing events in the Hebrew calendar to the lunar calendar, then, of course, comparing those to the Gregorian calendar and rounding up or down as needed, Camping declared with total certainty that the world would end on the 6th of September 1994, then, of course, realized he had failed to multiply the 7 horns by the 7 heads and an equal number of brides for brothers. So naturally, he revised the date for his much-desired day of planetary genocide to just 3 weeks later, and again for 4 days after that, and oopsie, once again for the 31st of March 1995, oh shit, and again for March 21st, 2011, for sure, except no, he for real meant October 21st of the same year. So, that's 0 for 7 for Harold Camping, who himself decamped the still extant world in December 2013. We're almost there, guys.
It does feel like once you survive the first, being wrong, you realize you got nothing to lose. You might as well just keep going for it.
I feel like your stock should plummet, but apparently not in the Christian world.
I know, and they just keep doubling down, and it seems to continue to work.
Yeah. So strange flying saucer cult leader who never blinked, Marshall Applewhite, who we discussed in episode 61, chose March 16th, 1997 as the day a comet trailing spaceship would take he and his followers away from an Earth shortly to be destroyed. That day turned out to be the end for him and 38 unfortunate souls who followed him. The rest of the world remained largely intact.
Pretty decent day for Nike, though.
It was a great day for Nike. And as you may have guessed, as the big 2000, the year 2000 rolled around, it was a pretty fucking crowded field rushing to get in on the eschatological action like last call at a bar in Dublin. Hang on tight, guys. The movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God, a Christian cult in Uganda who we dubbed the Banana Beer Crazies when we discussed them in episode number 3, prophesied the end of the world, then fucking made it happen by poisoning and burning 778 people to death on January 1st of that year. The man whom Christopher Hitchens said could be buried in a matchbox if given an enema, all-around horrible person and father of an all-around horrible person bearing the same name, Jerry Falwell, predicted 2000 would be the year God's judgment would commence. Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins, the evil scaremongers behind the Left Behind series of pop scare Bible fanfic books and super good movies, declared the computer meltdown of Y2K would unleash the Antichrist, which is in doubt, but it did unleash Nicolas Cage into the saddest, most exhausted role in a long, sad, and exhausted career. Another friend, potentially world record-holding rapist and the pharaoh of rural Georgia, Malachi Z. York, the former head of the Nubian nation that we discussed in episode 43, claimed that in the year 2000, a planetary alignment would pull all the planets towards the sun, causing what he called a, quote, star holocaust, which, oddly, was also the original title of the movie Cats. In addition to all those cranks that predicted the year 2000 as the end, so did the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce, the 13th century French theologian Peter Olivi, as did friend of the show and true father of humanity, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who we examined in episode 47, as did pastor and executive Ed Dobson at the perfectly misnamed Moral Majority, as did Christian psychic Ruth Montgomery, as did Pentecostal evangelist Lester Sumrall, as did 18th century preacher Jonathan Edwards. I could go on and on, but I won't. So, what do the people on this list of priests, prophets, popes, psychics, seers, bishops, broadcasters, shysters, hucksters, and chicken ladies have in common? All of them, and each and every one of them on this very partial list, was wrong. Hundreds and hundreds of public predictions about the end of the world, with dates certain, and albeit frequently revised, and as of this recording anyway, we're still here. So, Next time some televangelist crackpot predicts the end of days accompanied by a scrolling 1-800 number you can donate all your useless pre-apocalyptic cash to, gets you nervous that he may be right, remember to give this segment a re-listen. And I know shit seems crazy, but hang in there, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay the fuck home for the holidays, and we'll get through this. With public end of the world predictions being, about 0 for 600 at this point, you're going to be fine. So
Yeah.
that's the
Did
end of the
anybody-
world, and we know it, guys.
Did anybody
think the
predict
best-
2020 is the end of the world? Because
I just stopped at 2000. Like, I stopped. We could go on and on and on and on. We didn't even talk about the Mayans, right?
I mean, has
The New
anybody
Age
who
movement.
has lived this far into 2020 not predicted it as the possible end of the world?
Yeah.
I think
So-
I think that there have been some good things though that have come out of all of these predictions, including but not limited to whoever the genius was that set up the give us your money now because it's all going to be gone anyway, and we'll take care of your pets after the apocalypse
the
happens.
pet one I
I
forgot
love
about.
that.
That's so brilliant. We should
loved
we
that.
should look them up and see if they're still there and if they made some dough.
Yeah, I love that
I
idea.
love that.
Well, there you go. So that's there's no end of the world, but this is probably the end of this segment.
Well, and I feel fine.
Yeah.
Great. All right, then let's move on.